capacity to speak and so on. You probably heard that.
Yes, I heard the discussion. Yeah.
I mean, a number of things have been put to one side or have been changed.
Yes, so if a review of our process, which we'll take back, I'll take that definitely back to our branch committee and our service department personnel to just have another good look at the procedures, and if we can see a need to make some adjustments in that, that's what we would recommend to the governing body. There's no question on that.
So that, is it right to understand that if the evidence from this commission and the gathered expertise of professional people suggests that your process, by not involving women at the decision-making level, was a flawed process, would it be open to change?
I definitely think it is open to change. It always is. We've been reviewing the process for years, decades. So.
I'm specifically asking about the decision. Would it be open to change the composition of the decision-making body?
Of the Judicial Committee? Yeah, I can't see how it could, personally, but then I'm not the decision maker on that. That would be the governing body. But scripturally...
some things can change. For example, the role of women in the church and their capacity to speak. But whether or not women are decision makers can't change. Is that the idea?
As I understand it.
Now, why is that?
Well, because the scriptures are very clear that an overseer or an elder has to be a man. There's no provision in the scriptures for a woman to be an overseer, and it's the elders who are the shepherds and would judge in these matters. I think that's dealing now at the situation of the judicial process with the wrongdoer, not with the victim. The earlier processes that we've been talking about and listening to, I think there's certainly scope there for women to be involved in those steps.
What you're looking at is a determination of whether or not the allegation is true.
That's correct.
And all that I'm asking is, leaving aside whatever might be the other role of men in the church, I don't go there, but why is it not open to say now, given that you, as Jehovah's Witnesses, have created this process with its investigation and determination steps, why is it not open to change that process to include to include women in the decision-making component?
Well, it's probably a question that I'm not authorised to really give you a definite answer on, but it's certainly one that I'll be taking back to our branch committee and passing on to the governing body, because I can see the reasoning behind the suggestion, the recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, I assume you would accept that women bring a different perspective and a different understanding to an issue such as whether or not a young girl or a woman was sexually assaulted than a man might bring.
Most definitely. That's why women have the motherly instincts that a man just can't have.
And what your process does at the moment is exclude them from the decision-making component altogether, doesn't it?
So when you refer to the decision-making...
the determination of whether or not the allegation is true.
Excuse me, women could be involved in that step. So that could be involved in that step. So that's the point I was trying to make.
As decision-makers?
Well, she's listening to the comment. For example, the mother listens to her daughter.
No. We're talking about the processes which you have for determination and ultimately judicial determination of the truth of the allegation. Those processes at the moment exclude men. We've agreed on that.
Exclude women.
Exclude women.
No, I don't think so entirely, because women can be involved in that's talking about the investigation process.
I'm talking about the decision-making process.
Whether or not it is...
Whether or not it's true.
Yes. So I don't...
Women are presently excluded from that decision, are they not?
No, they could be involved in the discussions with the elders who've been investigating it. Like, there are many situations where women have perhaps been involved in talking to the victim, or maybe the victim's only comfortable to talk to a woman. She's sharing her observations with the elders. There's nothing wrong with that, nothing.
Well, I think I've exhausted my capacity to get to the real issue, but the real issue is whether the Church's processes will allow for women to participate
in the decision of
decision.
whether it needs to be in the decision of matter or not, whether it needs to be a judicial matter or not.
And
Guilt, establishing guilt.
the truth of the allegation.
Yes.
Mr. Brown, perhaps can be put like this, leaving the word involved out of it. On the present structure, a woman cannot be a decision allegation is on whether or not sufficiently proved. The allegation is.
She wouldn't be one of the two elders investigating. I could narrow it down to that.
So she cannot be the decision maker. And equally on the judicial committee, a woman cannot be a decision maker. A woman might be involved, giving evidence or whatever, but can't be a decision maker.
No.
And the question then is, do you see scope for that changing as to who the decision makers are and having a woman being a decision maker?
I certainly see scope in presenting that as an option to be explored more deeply than perhaps it has been up until now. Yes, definitely.
Mr. Brown, you've followed these proceedings closely over the last week and a half, I take it.
Yes.
And I sought to have a message conveyed to you yesterday evening. I hope you got it, and that's as to whether, having listened to it all, you have identified aspects of your process which seem to you to require re-examination and change.
Yes, I think a number of areas have come up for consideration that we need to now go back and look at much more carefully. One of them that I see is the matter of some clearer documentation for the ones who will be involved in handling investigations and judicial cases involving child sexual abuse I'm talking about. Maybe specific information just tailored to that, so that the elders would have much more at their fingertips in one package, the information they need. That's certainly one observation I'll be taking back. A second consideration would be that in the initial meetings with the victim, or the parents of the victim if it's a minor, that it's very clearly explained to them what the options are for them and what the implications are for either option, knowing that they'll have the full support of the elders, whatever is their decision.
And by options, you're referring to the possibility of reporting to the authorities?
Reporting to the authorities, or if they wanted it handled just within the church itself.
Yes.
Leaving them make the decision.
Yes.
So those are two factors that stand out significantly to me that we need to, and probably then in the process, the various steps that are taken from the initial discussion with the victim or the victim's parents in case of a minor, each step of the way ensuring that the victim or the parents understand what the next step is going to be. So there's complete clarity in the mind of what the process is all about, because I think that is a weakness that's been identified that needs clarification.
Yes. And anything further you've identified?
I think they're probably the three major things. I do take on board the point of more involvement with women in the process, if that can be accommodated. I'm not in a position really to state whether that would be or would not be, but I can certainly take that as a matter on the agenda for consideration.
You would have heard quite a bit about the question of the sufficiency of evidence, in other words, what's been referred to as the two-witness rule. Firstly, from what you've heard and the way in which it operates, do you consider it to be justified?
Yes, again, because we accept that scriptural direction that did come from Christ himself, that we don't see we have authority to go outside of that. That's in establishing whether or not there will be a judicial committee follow. It doesn't mean that we don't believe the victim or that we wouldn't take certain precautions and action where we can, but it just means that we don't have a basis to form a judicial committee at that point.
And insofar as the judicial committee itself is concerned, so not dealing with the step before that, what about on the question of whether the victim herself must give evidence in circumstances where there's no confession and no other witness, or no second other witness?
That she must give evidence. So maybe I just didn't quite understand the point of the question.
My understanding where things landed with Mr. Spinks yesterday was that when it comes to the judicial committee hearing itself, unless there's a confession or two other independent witnesses, it will be necessary for the victim herself to give evidence.
No, she would have been able to do that in a written statement. She wouldn't need to appear before the judicial committee or before the accused.
Well, what about the requirement that the victim must face her attacker?
No,
as it's put differently, that the accused has a right to be faced by his accuser?
I think the information that's been presented from the shepherding book indicates that that's not necessarily the case. Not even limiting it to child abuse, it says even if the victim is timid, they may not feel capable to face the accused. If that's the case, the elders would quite happily accept a written statement.
Well, we'll go back to what Mr. Spinks said himself in the documents that he referred to and then was tendered as 29-20. But do I understand from you that you accept that an appropriate process would not require the victim to give evidence in the face of her attacker or her alleged attacker?
Definitely not. If she felt she wasn't able to do that, that wouldn't be a requirement. In fact, she'd only be required to do it if she wanted to.
Yes, and with regard to the possible outcomes of a judicial committee hearing, reproval, of course, leaves a known offender in the congregation and in the family if the offender's in a family, not so.
Yes.
And disfellowshipping leaves a known offender in the family and or at large in the community.
That's true.
And both those problems can only be resolved with systematic reporting to the authorities. Would you agree?
Yes, well, that's true, but it doesn't necessarily remove the person, as I understand, from the community. If they were imprisoned, it would, but once they're released, you still face the same dilemma that we do, that the person's free in the community.
Well, you may be aware, Mr. O'Brien, that in New South Wales, at least, there's legislation that deals with that question of serious sex offenders coming to the end of their terms in jail, and as to assessments then being made as to whether they should be released. And there's a complicated process involving many professionals and reports and so on. Are you aware of that?
Yes. Well, the challenge that I see with the process for ourselves as a religious organisation and also with the judiciary is that there's a wide range of acts that constitute child abuse. Like to us, an adult sexting with a minor, we would regard that as child abuse and they would be dealt with judicially.
So would the law.
Right. But would they receive the same type of penalty as, say, somebody who raped a child? That's what I'm just saying. That's
obviously not, or presumably not, but that would be up to the particular court. But
Certainly.
my point is this, Mr. O'Brien, is that you, as the Jehovah's Witness organisation, don't have the power to intervene in a family in such a way as to ensure protection of children. You can give advice and counsel, but you can't really do more than that, can you?
No, that's correct. Yeah, we can't take over.
Child protection authorities in certain circumstances can.
Yes.
Yes. And so would you at least accept this, that it warrants further consideration by the Jehovah's Witness organisation as to whether they should systematically report child sexual abuse allegations?
I understand, listening to Mr. Toole and Mr. Spinks, that we have no hesitation in doing that if that's what's required by the law, but we don't see that we have the right to take that prerogative away from the victim or the parents of the victim if they chose not to.
And that's because of a scriptural principle?
Yes, that's right.
Now, with regard to redress, by which I mean responding to and potentially compensating victims of child sexual abuse within the organisation, I understand that in Australia the Jehovah's Witness organisation doesn't have a redress scheme.
No, and that's because we've never had a request so far for redress, so we haven't.
Well, you recognise it may be that there's been no request for redress because no scheme has been available.
I couldn't say why victims haven't requested that.
Yes,
So
all I'm suggesting is that it may not be a good reason to not have a scheme because there've been no claims. It may be that a scheme will be the very thing that gives comfort to a lot of people that their allegations are taken seriously and that they actually get compensated.
yes, certainly.
Is that not something that the Jehovah's Witness organisation should consider, having a redress scheme?
Yes, agree with that.
Because if we consider BCB's case as an example...
Just a second. You know that the Commission has been looking at the issue of redress, I assume.
I do, yes.
And it's fairly clear that the Commission will be recommending a response which brings together all of the institutions where there may have been problems to contribute their fair share. You understand that?
I recall that from the closed hearing we had with
The Jehovah's Witnesses prepared to contribute to such a scheme.
I'm not in a position to personally give that undertaking, Your Honour, but certainly
Who is?
we'd present that and discuss that.
Who is?
Well, that would be a decision, if it's the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, then that would be a decision for the 26 members. I don't have executive powers over the committee or the members, but I can certainly present that because I can see that that is a need that needs to be considered.
Would you recommend that the Church join in such a scheme?
I don't know whether I would recommend that the Church join in with other organisations, but certainly that we have some redress scheme of our own to care for victims who are Jehovah's Witnesses. I'd agree with that.
Why wouldn't you recommend that you join with others so that there's a uniform response across the country?
If I may just indulge on, Your Honour, when we had the closed meeting with yourself and others, that was a matter that I think was almost universally felt as a last option by those who were assembled for a variety of reasons. I think some may feel that would it be fair on smaller organisations and unfair on unfair on smaller ones, fairer on the larger ones. To manage it, I would see it as a much greater difficulty than for the individual organisation to provide their own scheme.
You must have a different recollection to me. But the theory would be that there be an organisation constituted to administer the scheme, and then each organisation contributes in accordance with its identified number and extent of survivor needs. You understand?
Yes, I understand the principle you mentioned.
And why wouldn't you join in that?
Well, again, I can't say that we would or wouldn't.
Sorry, why wouldn't you recommend that you join in that?
Well, I'd have to give it good consideration to recommend it, but I wouldn't rule out that we wouldn't consider that or that I wouldn't recommend that. But we'd have to see what the parameters were, what the considerations were for the organisation.
Well, the matter's been now talked about for months. Your organisation considered it in any structured way?
No.
We've had discussion papers, we've had roundtables,
No,
we've had public hearings.
Yeah, the round table discussion, I came away from that without any real conclusions. I felt maybe I didn't get the right message from it, but I didn't feel that it was a universally agreed to option, and I haven't read or heard any more about it since, to be honest.
Yeah, Dr. Jason Morrison, theologist again. I just want to say thank you for watching the videos, and I hope you got plenty of self-rediscovery and freedom out of it. If you watched it on YouTube, please share or like, maybe even comment. If you watched it on Facebook, like, comment, share. But most of all, get out and live. This isn't a rehearsal. You've got a one-off life. Don't let your loyalty and your faithfulness blind you to the life that you should be experiencing. Till the next video, thank you for watching, and bye for now.